After the disappointment of the 2023 World Test Championship final, India begin the next cycle, which is the 2023 to 25 cycle of the World Test Championship, with a 2-test series against the West Indies. Now, I know what it is we're all thinking. This isn't exactly one of the more glamorous test series or rivalries that we have in modern day cricket, because again, India are one of these superpowers, one of the behemoths of the game, both in terms of results as well as in terms of course, finances. Whereas the West Indies, well, they've been having problems of their own, and they are strong neither financially nor right now, truth be told, in terms of results, even though they have been okay, you can say, as a test team, at least in home conditions. However, they do of course have a legacy that, should be told, no amount of money can buy. And believe it or not, India versus West Indies test series actually do have some interesting, let's say, there's an interesting history behind a lot of it, and there's also some rather interesting quirky facts. So in this video, what we're going to do is check out some of the more interesting facts that you may or may not have known surrounding India versus West Indies test. And let's start off with the fact that, believe it or not, West Indies actually have a better head-to-head record in all of these test matches that have been playing. That is correct. India and West Indies have played 98 test matches, and the West Indies have actually won more test matches than India during that time period, which is, you'd think, a little bit surprising. But then if you go back in time and you cast your memory back, you'd remember that at one point the West Indies were very much the kings of the global game, and in test cricket they were a side to be feared, whether they were playing at home or whether they were playing away. And so in that context, it's probably not that surprising that you think about it, West Indies have more overall test wins. But it's still, if you tell someone, or if you tell someone that, you know, West Indies of now versus India of now, and they are unaware of the kind of history that West Indies possess in test cricket, then they too would be thinking, well, wait, how is it that they have a better head-to-head record? That is of course because times have changed, eras have changed, and whilst West Indies are definitely no longer a giant of cricket in terms of, as I said, either money or results, at one point they were the kings when it came to both, and therefore they were just one of those teams that were feared whether they were playing at home or away. Fact number 2 is, well, that in recent times, and this probably shouldn't surprise you, India actually have the much better record when it comes to test series. In fact, if you'd have to go back all the way to 2002 to find a test series wherein India did not end up on the winning side of things. And of course, that 2002 test series was a 5-test series, which is incidentally the last time that India and West Indies played a 5-match test series. Thereafter, it's mostly been 2 or 3-match test series, and India have won every single one of them. In fact, if you go back to the last 5 test match series which India have played against the West Indies, India have been comfortably the best side across all of them. And truth be told, in the early to mid 2000s, West Indies was still very much a formidable side. In recent times, even that has sometimes been a concern, that the quality of the opposition when India were playing West Indies was just not good enough, and therefore this one isn't really as much of a surprise as most people would think. In fact, it would have been shocking if the West Indies actually had a positive head-to-head record if you're talking about more recent test series. Fact number 3 is the fact that this is actually going to be the first time you're going to be seeing test matches played between these two nations for the first time in 4 years. You heard that right. The last time that either of these sides were actually involved in test match cricket was all the way back in 2019, when of course India had gone to the Caribbean, they played a 2-match series and won the 2-match series quite comfortably. Again, as I said, there's a reason this isn't a classic rivalry anymore. It's because the West Indies' fall from grace has been so gloriously bad, you can say, that they just aren't a team that most top sides want to be playing constantly. And the finances around, let's say, you know, the finances involved, because in the West Indies, their test teams haven't always been great, but their white ball teams have been more competitive. So more often than not, you'll get more people tuning in either on TV or coming to the stadiums to watch the white ball games than they would be the test games. Then the test game has also fallen into decline, and therefore this is not a series you see as often. Previously, as I said, if you go back to the 70s, 80s, and if any of you all have parents or relatives who were old enough to be watching those series at that point, you know that they looked forward to it. Unlike how it is today, not many people are really looking forward to a 2-test series against India and West Indies, but there are important WTC points at stake anyway. Fact number 4 is the fact that we will soon be coming up to a century of India versus West Indies test. And before we think of that, no, we're not talking about the number of years, because The first test that was played between India and West Indies was played in 1948. It's 2023. So obviously, it's not been 100 years. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, India and West Indies have played a total of 98 tests, which means that come the end of the series, they will have played 100 tests against one another. So again, that tells you that West Indies at one point were very much a team that a lot of people wanted to play, unlike today, and that this might actually be one of the more underrated, let's say, rivalries that have gone on in recent years. Because again, you'd remember that even to become world champions for the first time in 1983, India had to beat a West Indies team that had dominated the first two editions of the World Cup and were the clear favourites to take home a third cup, were not for the India or Indian underdogs pulling off, let's say, a victory for the ages. So again, this is one of those test rivalries that probably isn't as hostile. You see, in fact, a lot of the players are very friendly, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of West Indians do in fact play in the IPL. So there's a lot of friendliness, a lot of bonhomie, but as far as cricketing rivalries, this is definitely one of the more underrated ones. And the fact that we'll be coming up to 100 test matches between these two nations should in fact tell you that. And number 5, and this is an interesting one when you're talking about the venue of the first test, which is of course Dominica. Now Dominica will be getting a test match or for the first time in 12 years. Now that in itself is a pretty massive thing, but again, it speaks to the paucity of test match cricket that takes place in the West Indies more often than not. Again, as I said, financials do have a lot to do with it again, and the fact that this isn't a winning team means they probably don't get as much crowd support or even people on TV tuning in to watch them. But again, 12 years is a long time. In fact, as this story which Virat Kohli had put out on his let's say on his Instagram has gone viral and shown that the last time India and West Indies actually played a test in Dominica, Virat Kohli was a young upstart and Rahul Dravid was the veteran who was coming towards the end of his career. How times have changed since then, that now Dravid is the head coach and Kohli is the man, the one senior pro, former captain. But it does tell you just how much Dominica, the venue, has had to wait to actually get to see a match of this magnitude. And that's it from us for 5 interesting facts regarding the India-West Indies series, both past and present. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please don't forget to let us know by liking it, sharing it with your friends, subscribing to the channel, tapping that bell icon, and also leave us a comment. Some more interesting facts which we may actually, make a second part about, who really knows. Also, don't forget to download the AajTak app and also follow us across socials on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you're already on the channel too, you can go ahead and check out some other videos that we've done. But for now, from my side, it's goodbye.